Well, we've got a theme for the month of August that we're calling The Essence of Unity, which we're doing in honor of our co-founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, who were born in this month in 1854 and 1845, respectively. It gives us an opportunity to review our history and to talk about some of the basic ideas that we find in the Unity movement. You may have heard that unity is often labeled as part of what is loosely known as the New Thought movement, right? The problem is that nobody really agrees on exactly what New Thought means. So this is the definition that we left off with last week, which I think is a pretty good basic definition. It says, New Thought is about shepherding your thoughts so they don't run wild despite appearances. You may have every human reason for feeling negative, but New Thought asks you to make the outrageous choice to line up thoughts that make you feel positive anyway. Acting can make you feel better, but before you will change your acting, your thinking will have to change at least a little bit. Change your thoughts, and the feelings will follow. Now that's how the Fillmores confronted different health challenges that they had. Myrtle had tuberculosis. We talked about this a little bit last week. Myrtle had TB. And Charles had a dislocated hip, which happened when he was a child. I think he was around 11 years old. And there was no effective treatment for either of those conditions back in the late 1800s, so they had to come up with a do-it-yourself approach, which started with a discernment process. It starts with the question, what am I actually in control of? Well, when it comes to our bodily functions, the answer to that question is not very much. Think about it. Our most important, vital bodily functions are on permanent autopilot, so to speak. Which is a really good thing. Because who wants to go around having to remember things like how and when to breathe, to keep the heart beating, to digest and metabolize our food, to keep the kidneys doing what they do and the liver doing what it does? Very complicated processes that we don't have to think about or pay attention to. It's all on autopilot. I mean, the body is an amazing biological machine designed by the laws of nature and natural selection, and it gives us one thing that we can reliably control, and that is the way that we think. Specifically, the way that we think about the body, about health, about healing, about lots of different things, but this morning specifically, how we think about the body, how we think about health and healing. If we can manage our thoughts, if we can manage our emotions, then we can manage our stress levels and all sorts of things like that, which is what the Fillmores were on to. Okay, so today we know that tuberculosis has a spontaneous remission rate of about 29%. Without medical treatment, 29% of the cases will resolve and heal on their own. Now, I'm quite sure that Myrtle Fillmore didn't know this fact back in the late 1800s, but what she did know is that in spite of the appearances of the illness, all of the different symptoms that she had, and especially all the things that the doctors were telling her, she was going to take action to stay as healthy in mind and body as she possibly could. She was going to give herself every chance to be a part of that 29% who survived rather than the other group, 71% who didn't make it. She couldn't control the functioning of her body, but she could control the way that she thought about it and talked about it. And so she started by doing sort of a body scan meditation, which is how I describe it. Here's how Myrtle Fillmore describes it. She said, God revealed to me that my body was intelligent, that I could direct and praise it, and it would respond. So I told the life in my liver that it was not torpid or inert, but full of vigor and energy. I told the life in my stomach that it was not weak or inefficient, but energetic, strong, and intelligent. I told my limbs that they were active and strong. I told my eyes that they did not see of themselves, but that they expressed the sight of spirit. I went to all the life centers of my body, and I spoke words of truth to them, words of strength and power. I asked their forgiveness for the foolish, ignorant course that I had pursued in the past when I condemned them and called them weak, inefficient, and diseased. I did not become discouraged at their being slow to wake up, but kept right on, silently and aloud, declaring the words of truth until the organs responded. That's how she describes the process. She stopped dissing her body. She stopped trash talking her body. And how often do we do that? When we get sick and we think, oh, gee, terrible, rotten, miserable, things like that. She took the exact opposite approach. And it was years. I think she said it was about 2 years before she was symptom-free. So this was not an instantaneous process. When she said that she kept right on, yeah. And when she said they were slow to wake up, yeah, 2 years. But she beat the disease. Now today, TB is regarded as being highly treatable and curable with a 90% success rate. But that doesn't mean that we should abandon the approach that Myrtle took. Why not do both? Take your antibiotics and maintain healthy thoughts and healthy habits. The Fillmores never advocated foregoing medical treatment, which is a very dangerous thing to do. The problem they faced was that there was no medical treatment in those days. Charles couldn't just go someplace and get a hip replacement. That's something that's commonly done today. If you have a dislocated hip and the hip joint starts to deteriorate, which it did with him, you can get a hip replacement. I know many people here who have, and it's a wonderful thing. But that wasn't available to Charles, and his hip socket did not spontaneously regenerate. I want to show you a picture of him here. There he is over on the left. He's about 93 years old, close to the end of his life in that picture. You can clearly see how he's standing, can't you? You can clearly see that he has a stance in that picture on the left that shows that clearly one leg is longer than the other, all right? And over here, this is kind of a rare picture over here on the right. He's swinging a golf club at the Unity Village Golf Course, which is still there today. And again, you can see from the way he's standing, one leg very straight and the other one bent because, again, he has that hip problem. One leg is shorter than the other. But here's the point, all right? Here's the point. He's swinging a golf club, right? He is on the golf course, and he didn't allow his physical condition to prevent him from doing what he wanted to do and what he needed to do. That's the most important thing here. The thing about life on planet Earth, which we all have to accept, is that nobody gets out alive. And here's a poodle to remind us of that fact. Enjoy life because no one gets out alive anyway. You might ask, why a poodle? I simply say, why not? I thought that's Annie. Anybody? That's our little Annie. So anyway, she gets her plug today. But the fact is that nobody gets out alive, so enjoy life. We all want to extend life. And quantity of life is important. But what's even more important is the quality of life that we have on whatever circumstances that we have to deal with. And I think that's the lasting legacy of the Fillmores in an age of modern medicine where both of their conditions would have been considered not just treatable but curable. So if I have a ruptured appendix or a compound fracture, don't send me a meditation teacher, okay? Bring on the surgeon, bring on the antibiotics. I'll start the affirmations and meditation as soon as the anesthesia wears off, and then I'll keep it up to help with the recovery effort. We need both approaches, mind and body, which I think is exactly what the Fillmores believed in. Even while Myrtle was teaching people how to do what she did, her interest in healing extended to the body as well. And one of her criticisms of many of the spiritual teachers of her day was that they tended to neglect the body. Here's what she said. One who does not understand that the body requires care day by day often fails to do that which is truly best for the body. It is a common error among us that we do not exercise, rest, work, eat, and drink as we should. So the message is clear. Take your meds, eat your veggies, exercise, and meditate and do your affirmations. There's nothing very complicated or mysterious about that, but it's more than just positive thinking, which only goes so far. Of course we want to cultivate and maintain a sense of optimism. Having a positive outlook helps us to stay motivated to take action and to do whatever it takes to be advocates for our own well-being. Sometimes that's the best thing that we can do for ourselves in any situation where we're facing a health challenge, is to learn how to be an advocate for our own well-being. But there is actually what you might call a dark side to positive thinking. And believe it or not, there are some people in the world who claim that a positive attitude is actually negative. You might be wondering, who could possibly have anything negative to say about being positive? Well, there is at least one out there who wrote an entire book on the subject. Her name is Barbara Ehrenreich. The book is called Bright-Sided: How the Relentless Promotion of Positive Thinking Has Undermined America. All right? She's serious. This is not a satirical book. This is serious. Her basic premise is that positive thinking can lead to a lack of vigilance and ultimately recklessness. So she blames positive thinking for getting us into things like the Iraq War and also causing the Great Recession of 2008. It was a form of basically cautionless optimism, she says, that got us there. And when I first read about the book and her theories, when I first heard about it, my first reaction was to dismiss her as a crackpot, or what I had once heard someone refer to as a cave person. Y'all know what a cave person is? A cave person is citizen against virtually everything. You name it, they're again it. Puppies, kittens, whatever it happens to be. So I decided to take, shall we say, a more positive attitude towards her, which I guess might sound passive-aggressive, but so be it. I can live with that. And I dug a little bit more into her background, which is in the book, and it turns out, what I discovered was that the foundation to her aversion to positive thinking started when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Just like a lot of people who get that diagnosis, she went through all sorts of different emotions: fear, distress, anger. And the message that she was getting from pop culture, especially pop culture spirituality, was that it was wrong to feel that way. It was wrong to acknowledge those feelings of fear and anger and worry. It was wrong in some circles to even name the disease or talk about it. You hear that. It was starting to sound to me like she was another victim of that thing that we call metaphysical malpractice, which every so often we have to talk about. Metaphysical malpractice, which is when we say things like, well, what was it that was in your consciousness that brought that illness to you? What was it in your consciousness that brought that accident to you? What was it in your consciousness that must have drawn that investment loss to you? All of those kind of things that people try to blame the victim for. And that's what it is. Blame the victim. But you fill in the blank. What was it in your consciousness that drew that to you? Blame the patient for the illness because they weren't thinking the right kinds of thoughts. Blame the person who happens to be in the way of the drunk driver because they must have harbored a secret fear of getting into a collision. I'm not making this up. This is in some popular New Agey type books that are out there. Now, of course, I know there are times when what we are thinking, or more often than not thinking, is directly responsible for our circumstances. Of course, there's a link between chronic anger and stress and things like heart disease and stroke. And yet I've known several angry, negative thinking, stressed out type A people who have lived to a ripe old age and died peacefully in their sleep. Sometimes we're distracted, right? We're not thinking. We're not paying attention. We make a mistake and bad things happen, and it is our fault. Kind of like this sign that someone posted on, oh, that's kind of hard to read. It says, everything happens for a reason. Sometimes the reason is you're stupid and make bad decisions. Ouch. Now that's a bit negative. But I can definitely relate to it. Okay, so the point I'm making here is that we all know when the things that we're thinking or not thinking play a role in what happens to us. And yet, many times it's someone else who is distracted and not paying attention, and we just happen to be in the vicinity and find ourselves in the way of their mistake, okay? Of course, I guess we can always blame it on just getting out of bed in the morning, right? That's your fault because you decided to get out of bed this morning. But the point here is that we want our positive thinking to be grounded in reality. And this is a reality where trees fall on people through no fault of their own, things break, stuff happens. Out here the wildfires burn. Back in the Midwest where I come from, it's tornadoes. In other places it's hurricanes that are the prevalent natural disaster that we just don't control. And of course everyone grows old, gets sick, and eventually dies. The message of unity today is that we need to learn how to live in right relationship with that reality. And it is indeed a learning process. We have to learn. It's a process. And the learning process didn't start or stop with the Fillmores. They just happened to be the ones who were so instrumental in refining it and then passing it on to us. Shall we say, passing the torch to us to continue to do that work. So that's where we're going to pick up again next week. We're going to be talking about Unity's approach to the good life, how to live in right relationship with reality. See you then.